Hello.
When your mind is
Buongiorno.
Good evening, Graham. Good evening, Anthony.
Ah, ciao, baby. That's the
So I
most
was
Italian
convinced
ever.
you were going to get drowned in Bologna with all the flooding, but you're back.
Well,
So welcome.
no, missed it. Good for me. The flooding areas weren't where I was, which was a bit handy.
So if you'd been in Venice, it might have been Death in Venice.
Well, I hope not. No.
No, no. Well, that's good news. I'm trying to think of another Venice title that's a bit more cheery. Merchants in Venice. Well, that's no use to anyone in the circumstances.
No, let's not go there.
No, let's not revisit that. So, Graham, now we're going to focus quite strongly on that tonight, and I think that's an interesting thing to do for
Yeah, well, we are an international podcast with
well, we
downloaded in
are.
28 countries. And
Yeah.
and some people may say that this is a bit self-indulgent for me to
Would I be?
ramble on.
I might well be among them, but
Yeah,
no,
well, the thing
I
is,
think it's a good idea. I mean, I'm not going to bore you at all with my trip to Copenhagen. I'm not. But I think this is more in. Well, I'm not saying that my trip to Copenhagen wasn't of interest. I
well,
mean, it
it's
was, but
Yeah, but
but
there's no
this
point
this
going abroad if you don't learn cultural things and
uh,
historic things and arts
yes,
things, and that's why I go abroad. So
yeah,
it's all part of the mix when in covering the arts.
broadening the mind. So,
Mm.
if we say that, so the way that you've introduced this is, I shall read this with delight, travels in modern Emilia Romagna and how Romeo and Juliet mania is Verona's Harry Potter. So that's a hell of a start,
It's
Graham.
it. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, but look, I spent a week in Emilia-Romagna, which is an incredible place in northern Italy. Not quite as high up as Milan, but not far, and not that far from Venice either. And I spent a couple of days in Verona, 5 in Bologna with a trip to Rimini, going by planes and trains. There's a lot of train travel. So
Mm,
it it was an experience of the whole place very quickly, and
mm.
we did a lot in a short space of time. We basically we arrived and conquered the place, if you can use such a word, in 2 days flat. So the first 2 days anywhere new is like blitzkrieg, like we go there, we go there, we go there, we go there,
Wow.
we go there, we go there. Done it, done it, done it, done it. And by the third day,
Yeah.
you're slowing down and you've got used to the pace of Italian life and where everything is, and you're not
And
getting
the topography of
lost.
it, the topography,
Yeah.
the layout of the place. It is funny. You're right. I think by the third day, one is always confident, or at least if one's making the same mistakes as on the first 2 days, you know how to rectify them. Whereas in the first 2 days, you don't. So now
Yeah.
Emilia Romana, who's not a sort of heroine from a great Italian film, but instead is a place that I have never been to. Why did you go to Emilia Romana? What is it that attracted you to going there?
It's not the obvious tourist spots of Italy, although it does get a
No.
lot of tourists from around the world, and it gets a lot of Italian tourists. They're mainly drawn there because it's a famous region for food and drink,
Hmm.
especially tortellini and bolognese and cheese and wine. And in Bologna and Verona, there was not a side order of fries in sight. This is proper Italian cooking, and it's not a mix and match like the British always do
No.
with foreign food.
Everything with
In
chips.
it, yeah, they don't integrate other foods into their food. They give you the best of their food,
Yeah.
and I only found one McDonald's, and I didn't find it. I bumped into it in
Mm.
Bologna or Verona, just one, and the colors and the designs of the frontage of McDonald's in Bologna was so muted it was practically invisible. You practically couldn't see it was there. It was almost like Bologna was ashamed to have a McDonald's, but they've been
I
forced to
wish
have
that
one.
I wish that without
Exactly, yeah. So it was all great,
sort of
but I
getting
didn't go
into
there. Ironically, I
dangerous.
didn't go there for food and drink.
Mm.
I went there for the music and the films and the art and the craft beer, obviously. Craft beer, obviously. You go all the way to Italy for craft beer, obviously.
Obviously. And now craft beer that was just it's served in bottles.
Well, no, it's like the rest of Western Europe and America. The
Mm.
craft beer revolution is spread far and wide into having craft beer bars, craft beer microbreweries,
Yeah.
craft beer in bottles, cans, hand pulled. It works. It's exactly in that way. It's exactly the same as Britain.
So it is
There's
handpulled. It
found a
is
lot of
handpulled.
craft
Fine.
beer
Okay.
bars in Bologna.
It's
A
just that
lot.
whenever I've seen any adverts for Italian beers, they never
Mm.
ever seem. Are they ever seen pulling anything? Or maybe there's that one where he puts the knife across the top of the glass. Is
Yeah.
that Italian, possibly?
Well,
Hmm.
yeah. Well, I think you're right in the sense that craft beer bars tend to be more hand pulled than other standard, long standing, mass produced
Mm.
Italian beers. Well, that's what I found.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing I found as well was that I always judge when I'm abroad what sort of music people listen to by t-shirts. Not everybody wears a t-shirt about
No.
bands, but there's always a smattering of other tourists from different parts of the world, or even locals who wear t-shirts. And I found in Bologna, Verona, that what turned up on the t-shirts that I saw, and this is obviously not a scientific survey,
No.
the Beatles turned up on t-shirts, the Doors turned up on t-shirts, Bob
Yes.
Marley, Eminem, AC/DC,
Yeah.
Joy Division, and The Cure. And this is in Italy, which isn't known for being the
No.
coolest music place in the
No.
world. I was always looking for record shops. I didn't find one in Verona, but I
Mm.
found a proper one in Bologna, proper old school record shop,
Yeah.
independent. But I did find places in Verona and Bologna which had small record sections, usually vinyl, sometimes a bit of CDs. And the interesting thing about both Verona and Bologna
Yeah.
is that the two vinyl albums that were always there wherever I saw vinyl albums were Nick Cave's new one, Wild God, and
Oh God.
Fontaine's DC's new one, Romance. They both turned up several times. So clearly there's some people in Italy listening to bands like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and
Yeah.
Fontaine's
Yeah.
DC.
And so, Graham, normally, here's another sort of wild generalization, but normally you would see t-shirts with Kurt Cobain on them, most definitely, wherever you turn up in the world. He seems to be mostly on. Was it no Kurt Cobain?
I saw a Nirvana one, but it was a sort of like play on a Nirvana album cover. It wasn't actually Nirvana itself. So there was
Hmm.
one Nirvana reference I saw.
And you can't normally these days move without the Ramones on a t-shirt.
Yeah, didn't see that. Didn't see that
Oh,
whatsoever.
grand! So that there's a
But
so not that that's so there's a bit of Italian unpredictability because I mean
yeah,
everywhere you go now across the world, the Ramones has become the staple T-shirt, hasn't it?
that's true. But in Italy, in Verona, although it's famous for opera,
Yes.
I didn't see any opera. I'm not a massive opera fan,
Oh
as you
well,
know.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly.
when I was having supper one night
Hmm.
in the main square, at which the heart of it is an ancient Roman arena, which is
Hmm.
still used for live concerts. Well, when I was sitting there having supper, I thought, what's that noise coming from the arena? And it sounded like, and I couldn't quite make out, it sounded, even though it was quite close, it sounded like a sort of like average Simple Minds track from about 1987 or
Hmm.
88. And it turns out it was, in fact, a genuine Italian rock music superstar called
Hmm.
Claudio Baglioni, who's
Claudio
70,
Baglioni.
he's 73 years old, but still in good nick. And this is the interesting part because if you look to see famous bands that sell records abroad over the
Hmm.
years, they always sell far fewer copies in places like Italy than in
Yeah.
Britain, America, because it isn't that sort of place. But Claudio has sold 60 million records since his career started in 1972, which is
Ah.
absolutely phenomenal. So
So it's
he's
like
an absolute
It's
superstar.
like
He's
the Johnny
also,
Holiday of Italy. Yeah. Yes. Is that, yeah.
well, this is where you're wrong because
Oh.
he's a songwriter, not just a singer. He's a
Hmm.
producer, not just a singer. He was a trailblazer. He was into world music early. He was in electronic music early. So he's like this really famous Italian, big
Hmm.
selling, talented, successful, not boring, not predictable. And I've
Hmm.
never heard of him. So
Exactly.
it tells you how little interest Britain and America takes in the Italian rock music scene. But perhaps we
Any
should be more
any Jack Savaretti t-shirts out there? Handsome
none.
man that he is.
Yeah. Well,
No,
he's apparently
even though
Swiss.
he's now done his first album in the Italian language.
Has he? That's good. He's a
Yeah,
nice chap. I interviewed him once for the Harrogate Advertiser,
yeah,
and he was thoroughly
yeah.
nice.
So
Mind you, he's well
Graham,
educated.
um, so films. Now, in terms of films, what did you see films out there? I mean, did you spend time in the dark in
It
cinemas?
it turns out that Bologna is a major centre of films. our hotel called the Palace Hotel, which
Mm.
is a magnificent building, a magnificent interior, huge rooms, which have clearly not been looked after for about 80 years, but retained that sort of faded
Yeah.
grandeur and elegance,
Yeah.
was right next door to a cinema
Mm.
within a 10-15 minute walk of our hotel in
Yeah.
Bologna,
Yeah.
right in the middle of Bologna. There were four major cinemas in a 10-15 minute walk. It's a
Gosh.
major cinema town. And
Mm.
right in our doorstep as well was Cinema Modernissimo, which is
Mm.
basically the Italian version of BFI in London. And it's
Oh.
underground and it's got striking modernistic red and white interior designs. And it
Fabulous.
shows films in their original language without dubbing them,
Yeah.
which in Italy is quite rare. In Italy, they dub everything,
Yeah,
absolutely
exactly.
everything.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's such an important place, and it's got a huge film archive. It's so important that they rebuilt it to bring it up to date, and it was
Yeah.
reopened last year. And last year, as part of the reopening build-up, Martin Scorsese turned up in Bologna for the cinema. And then when it was
Oh.
actually opened, Wes Anderson, the director, turned up for the opening. So Bologna is a really important cinema place, which again, the British don't seem to know. So
No.
it's
No.
typical British lack of interest in large parts of the world. And the area itself, Emilia Romagna, is also the home of three of Italy and modern cinema's most important film directors of the 50s, 60s, 70s, so even a bit of
Hmm.
the 80s.
Shall we name
So,
them?
for example, yeah, Pier Paolo Pasolini was
Yeah.
born in Bologna.
Oh.
Bernardo Bertolucci was born in Parma, which is about an hour away.
No way. Yeah.
And Antonioni was born in Ferrara, which again is about an hour away.
Mm.
So Bologna, Emilia Romagna, is a really important, and obviously Fellini was born in Rimini, which we went to by train, which
Yeah.
took about an hour and a half on the train. And Fellini himself is from Rimini. And so it's such a important world place for cinema that I can't believe that anybody British who cares about films hasn't actually been there, doesn't actually go there. It's such an important place.
Could you also sense why it produced film directors? Could you sense that at all?
Well, if you do a free walking tour, which is the best way
Mm.
to get to know a city quickly rather than getting on the tourist bus,
Yeah.
on the free walking tour, the whole history of Bologna was explained. And Bologna has a long history of being independent thinking, a bit rebellious, and a bit left wing. And I think combined with the fact that the north of Italy was always the industrial heartland of Italy,
Yeah.
unlike the south, I think it's the most modern, it was the most modern part of Italy and the most forward thinking
Mm.
and the most, in terms of culture, the most alternative place. It's got a huge student population. There's nearly 100,000 students in Bologna,
Mm.
and that affects the whole culture of the place. So I think it's the one place in Italy where I know that Rome's famous for filmmaking. There's the famous film studios there,
Of
but in
course. Yeah.
terms of creativity and trailblazing, groundbreaking film directors, if any part of Italy was going to produce those sort of guys like Fellini and Bertolucci and
Mm.
Pier Paolo Pasolini, it was
Mm.
going to be Bologna and Emilia Romagna. And I was really thrilled to be there. It was just
So
fantastic.
did
And when
you
we went,
did you go and see a film then? Because it sounds a beautiful
no,
cinema. This
we
one.
went,
Mm.
went around all the cinemas and
Yeah.
had a look, but
Yeah.
none of the films we want to see were at the right time for us to go
Ah,
and see
okay.
them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, it was quite funny because the Italians still like to rename films. So one of the films we missed was Brian De Palma's classic Carrie from
Oh gosh.
1976.
Yes.
But
Yes.
in Italy, Carrie is renamed Carrie, the Gaze of Satan.
Oh, what?
Carrie, the Gaze of Satan.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because they wanted to sell it. They obviously wanted people to get
Yeah.
bums on seats. So
Yeah.
it was such a thrill to go to Rimini by train, to go to the Fellini Museum, and then went to Cinema Fulgor, the art house cinema that
Yeah.
uh, he himself took so seriously, and went to the Grand Hotel, which features in several of Fellini's films, because
Yeah. Exactly.
Fellini's childhood in Rimini is really important to his movies, and
Mm.
bits of Rimini kept on turning up in lots of his
Mm.
most famous films. And
Mm.
to actually be in those spots where Fellini was just incredible. And we were sitting on the beach at Rimini, which is, luxurious and extreme. Just to be in the beach makes a mockery of any British beach. And we're having something to eat in a fish restaurant. And it's out of the season, so there weren't many tourists around.
No.
In the vast expanse of gorgeous white sand in deep blue sea was right in front of us with virtually nobody on it.
Huh?
And the only other people around us were local Italians having the lunch. And it's the only time in Italy I felt like I was actually in a Fellini movie. I thought, oh, wow, this feels like I'm a character in a film.
We'll come back shortly to both discussing art that you experienced there and also the Romeo and Juliet element of
Oh,
the
yes, of
discussion for
course.
this evening. But I'm very keen to have your first of your interruptions, Graham.
Yeah, well, the first one is an apology to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds for being so critical of Wild God, the new album.
And I thought you might come to
In my
reassess this.
usual,
Why am I not surprised at this?
uh, yeah, I've got form. You're right, but I'm only reassessing it partially. I still
Okay.
think it's slightly hard work, and it declines in the middle of the album. But the best tracks are the ones that are full of wild orchestration
Yeah.
and are swept away in emotion. Those are the best tracks. And
Yes.
there's two classic tracks in the album. I would say two classic tracks, which is better than no classic tracks. And the opening track, "Song of the Lake,"
Hmm.
is phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
such an upsetting song because it seems to capture the absolute essence of deep grief
Hmm.
in about 4 minutes flat. It's just amazing, but it does tail away in the middle before it recovers a bit at the end.
Yeah.
So I still don't think it's one of his great albums, but it's not as
Did you
it's
notice
as bad
that
as I thought it
uh,
was.
he's contributed a medley to the new Joker film as well? The Folly, what is it? What is it called?
Yeah, I haven't
Folly
seen
de,
that
Folly
yet
de,
with Lady
Folly
Gaga.
de, what was it called?
Yeah, oh, it's got some pretentious title. I can't remember, but Lady Gaga's in it. And there's music and stuff. So
Folly à deux.
oh, nice.
Yes, that was Celestine who has seen it. Yes, so so he's done. I think it includes "Get Happy" as one of the three medley numbers that he's done.
Ah, mm.
Maybe "All the Time in the World" or something. Anyway, so yes, so he's making his contribution to that. We'll probably look at the Joker actually, that new film when both of us get to see it. I think it's a good discussion point for a future edition. So Graham, I'm briefly going to deflect away, and we're going to come back in the second part to both the art that you experienced and also, as I say, to Romeo and Juliet. But just a little bit of a British reflection. Quite the year for Shed 7. I don't think even in their wildest dreams, their 30th anniversary year could have gone any better. I've called it an annus miraculous, if that's technically Latin. A reminder that the year started for Shed 7 with their first ever number one album, A Matter of Time. And this came more than 29 years after the release of their first album, Change Giver. Now, that was an achievement in itself. And they came back to playing live from 2007 onwards, but they've more strongly, really returned more strongly than ever this last year with now a second album as well called Liquid Gold, which is well, I say orchestral. There are vocals, of course, but it's orchestral arrangements of some of their best-known tracks, and also there's one new song on there, plus also a song that was largely a throwaway, actually, from the first of the comeback albums, and which features Izzy Ferris on it. The great achievement here is that, yes, again, Shed 7 have gone to number one. This is
Yeah.
only the
Well, the
20th
amazing
time
thing.
20th time that a band has had two, or
No, I
an
know.
act has,
This
I
is
mean,
this
that
is
has had
unbelievable.
two number ones in a year. I mean, it's remarkable in its own way,
Yeah,
isn't it?
well, Shed 7, when they were at their peak in the 1990s during Britpop,
Yeah.
were not one of the more fancied Britpop
No, they
bands
weren't. No, they weren't.
and weren't regarded particularly highly.
No, they weren't.
They were really successful. They weren't
Mm.
as really successful as Oasis or Pulp or
Mm.
Blur, etc. So
Mm.
for them to have two more albums the same year after all this time
Yeah.
is frankly incredible. It's the equivalent of when Leicester won the Premier League. It's that remarkable, and it probably never happen again that someone like Shed 7 would pull this off. But they seem to have as well as being musically rejuvenated and sort of finding their purpose. They're
Mm.
not going through the motions of treading
No,
water.
no, absolutely not.
When Rick Witter was on our show
Yeah.
talking about their forthcoming new album, which turned to go at number one,
Mm.
I think it was about last November.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably wouldn't talk to us now because they're born again huge. But he
He
talked to
would.
us
He
back
would.
then.
He
Yeah,
does.
yeah, just about a year ago, he would talk to us.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he could tell that his heart was in it, and I think
Yeah.
this is part of the difference and part of the reason they're successful now It's partly their hearts in it. And
Mm.
also they seem to have learned how to handle social media really well. So there was a real campaign both times to get those albums number one. And if you watch what they were saying on Twitter and what Rick
Mm.
was tweeting on the terrible X that we all still have to use,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was all great stuff. They're like, I don't know how they've done it, but they're masters of social media now. And for a
I,
band of their age to suddenly become
that's savvy.
this good is
I,
just
I
unbelievable.
think you've hit on the, well, I think the other element we should say is the sheer diversity of, I mean, even outdoing uh, Taylor Swift in the variations on how many different versions of this album that you can
Mm,
buy. So, for example, the one that I have, the one I bought is the one that comes with cover versions with it. But they've also now they've done a demos version of it. They've done one where you can get recordings of the concerts that they did, of course, this summer in the museum gardens. So there's myriad, and again, vinyl versions, cassette versions, CD versions, signed versions, different signed versions of it. They also, of course,
mm,
back this up with going around the country as they are, going to city stores, record shops like they went to, I think, Assay in our favourite place in Edinburgh. They've also been playing Change Giver gigs there. I think they're coming up round about now. So the anniversary of the 30th anniversary of that album. So they're playing special shows with that album. These ones that they're doing with the signings, they're also playing small scale gigs at them. So they really have, and this is before the massive tour, that their biggest ever winter tour that they're doing. So they have worked proverbials off this year to really, really push the
yeah,
30th anniversary.
it's almost like they've gone to Switzerland to have their blood changed to
Yeah,
become 30 years younger. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's really bizarre. And also, it's great that they're engaging with the digital world so well
yes,
because
yeah.
these days, if you don't, you can't sell records. And so
No.
I was reading about Charlie XCX and
Mm,
her album Brat,
mm,
which even though she's famous and big and successful, even if you're big and successful online, your album's not streamed for very long before it
no,
just reverts
mm,
to like individual tracks that people like. Albums
exactly.
don't
Mm,
survive online. So her Brat album managed to up its Spotify streams by 32%, not because she released a new track, because I think she tweeted something or did something on
mm,
Instagram, some line which went viral. So, and that
yeah,
line was, and it was when Camilla Harris had first become the presidential nominee for the Democrats in
yeah,
America. And she tweeted, Kamala is Brat. As a result of that, that three-word tweet, her Spotify streams for her album, Brat, rose by 30%. So these days, you have to, if you don't engage with the digital world, you just don't sell
yeah,
albums. So all power to Shed 7 for working
yeah.
out how to do it.
Yeah. It's a brat trap, baby, and you've been caught.
Exactly.
So, Graham, we'll have a second interruption and then we're going to look at perhaps the art side. Let's have a second interruption and then we'll discuss the art that you experience because I'm always fascinated by that. I always, in any trip that I do abroad, I love going to the galleries and the museums. It's always a big part of it. So, fascinated to hear about that. But let's just have a second interruption if we may, Graham.
Black Midi split up despite being sensationally, instrumentally amazing and being nominated for a Mercury Prize only about 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
Geordie Creep, the lead singer, has gone solo. And I think they split up because they've worked out that the sort of noise they make on stage is never going to sell lots of albums and he's never going to make them any money. So Geordie
No.
Creep's now about to tour solo. He's got a solo album out, but I heard a few tracks and it pretty much sounds like Black Midi. So I
Not
wonder if
much
Geordie will
compromise
be
there,
more
then.
successful
No.
than Black Midi.
No.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
Mm. So, well, anyway, look forward to hearing about that. And likewise, Graham, I noticed that the Field Music got a new album coming up, and we may be looking at that when
I'm off to
that's released.
see the boys, the Brewis Brothers, this Sunday at Jumbo Records. They've
Oh,
got
yeah.
an in-store in-store signing session combined with a little
Oh,
gig
excellent.
on
Good.
Sunday at
Good,
Jumbo.
good.
So I'm off for
Excellent.
that.
Well, we'll talk about that when you've
Love
done
field
that, Graham.
music.
That'd be interesting to hear about. Now, Graham, let's talk about the art that you've experienced, whether this was in
Mm.
Bologna. And of course, the first piece of art in Bologna, I should mention, is spaghetti bolognese.
Bolognese.
That's yeah, exactly. So my first
Goodness
question
sake,
is:
Joe.
did you actually do the cheesy thing of eating some spaghetti bolognese in Bologna?
No, I ate a lot of tortellini. That was
So you
exceedingly
didn't have
good.
any
And
spaghetti bolognese. What kind of research is that?
well, it's just so obvious, Charles. I
I knew
tried
you
to
were going to
avoid the
say that.
obvious.
So that's
Yeah,
disappointing answer.
yeah,
Sometimes it's like going to Whitby and not having the fish and chips. I don't get it.
yeah. But we went to a restaurant in because the restaurants in Bologna and Verona all look old because the town itself, the cities themselves, are very very old, and they don't build that many modern buildings to keep the place looking old, which is great. It's amazing. But we found a restaurant in Bologna which looked modern and was modern. It was the sort of place that David Lynch would have come up with,
Yeah.
and it was sort of dark. It looked like a sort of like maybe an estate agent's office, or no, it's too colourful. Maybe
Yeah.
a chartered accountant's office outside, and you walk straight past it. There's no signs that you could see, and then you look through the window through these like strange Twin Peaks like thin curtains. And you could see
Mm.
there were people in there and some staff. So, oh, obviously this must be a restaurant. And you went round to the door. You finally found the door, and it was locked. And you could see the people inside, and you couldn't get in. So you had to bang the door to get let in. And then once you were let in, it was all candlelit, but it wasn't proper candles. It was electric candles. But electric candles, which were lovely sprinkled around the restaurant,
Yeah.
weren't bright enough to actually light it properly. So when you looked across the restaurant, everybody was in sort of like silhouette, and you and you thought, "Good grief, is this really Italy? This isn't what the Italians normally do."
No, exactly. Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing I was looking for. I wasn't looking for
No,
all
that's
the
fair
obvious
enough,
stuff.
Graham. So my wish for because the ultimate Italian art form is pasta. But
Mm.
so now, where did you take in art? Did you go to galleries? Did you go to museums?
Well,
What did you
you
do?
obviously go to churches. All the churches has great Renaissance and
Yes,
sometimes
exactly,
pre-Renaissance art,
exactly. Mm,
and obviously went to like the art gallery in Bologna, which specializes in Bolognese art from pre and Renaissance times itself. And
mm,
a lot of that is quite similar. Although
exactly.
interestingly, the pre-Renaissance era religious art in Bologna is sort of Gothic, and the figures of Christ are very much like a graphic novel interpretation. So that's
Really?
actually quite
Mm.
interesting. Whereas once you get to the Renaissance era, suddenly you've got really technically gifted
Yeah,
3D facial images
yeah.
of the various religious characters, which becomes a bit samey unless you love
And
that
loads
sort of
and
thing.
loads and loads of gold usually.
Exactly, lots of
Yeah,
gold, and so you had to do that because that's really important. But I didn't particularly like it. I preferred going to the modern stuff. So
yeah.
went to the modern museum called Mambo, and saw a lot of Italian art of the last 100 years, which was really interesting.
Mm.
But also went to, and this is the best bit, Palazzo Fava, because it was hosting an exhibition by Try and Guess. Try and Guess Who? My great old friend Weiwe, the Chinese
Your
dissident.
dear friend Weiwe.
Yeah, yeah. So Weiwe would I missed Weiwe by a week. He turned up about 5 days earlier to open the exhibition, which is
He
called.
knew, he knew, he knew, Graham, that you were coming, and he just didn't want to have
Oh
that
yeah,
devastating
he's
conversation you had in Cambridge again. So,
exactly, yeah.
mm.
And he's called the exhibition "Who Am I," which seems to me a ridiculous title because he does know he knows who he is and everybody else knows who he is. So
Exactly.
that seems
This is not
seems
no way.
that
This is Weiwe.
yeah. He's way off with that one. And the exhibition included a sort of survey of his work overall from the last 30 years. Some of the pieces I'd seen in Cambridge at Kettle Yard in 2022 when I met him and chatted with him briefly. But the other stuff was really recent from 2023, which I'd never seen. And the interesting thing is that most of his recent art is in Lego pieces, lots and lots of tiny Lego pieces. And most of it are satirical plays on famous art masterpieces of the past.
Yeah.
And that was quite interesting to see. I wasn't quite sure how much I liked it, but it was interesting.
Mm. Mm.
But I was
So,
also more in, yeah, sorry.
no, go on, Graham. Go on. Mm.
I also learned about Mary Shelley when we were in Verona. Oh, no, in Bologna rather, because the
What did you
statue
learn
in
about Mary
Bologna.
Shelley? What did you
Well,
learn?
I learned that Luigi Galvani, who was the
Hmm.
Italian man in Bologna, who sort of like started to experiment with electricity and human bodies to see how they direct to electricity. So he was a really important scientific figure. He's got his own statue, and that's the word galvanized comes from that. Galvanized comes from
I never knew
Galvani.
that.
What?
Gosh.
Yeah,
Mm.
Italian. There's so many things that are Italian you don't know. But
Mm.
Frankenstein, supposedly written after Mary Shelley and a bunch of their famous literary friends, were at Lake
Yes.
Geneva in a thunderstorm, and they were
Mm.
challenged to write a horror story, and she came up with that.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
this turns
Mm.
out to be absolute rubbish because
Hokum bunkum. Really?
Galvani's cousin was doing the same thing in London, experimenting with electricity in bodies. And Mary Shelley knew Galvani's cousin and went to these experiments where you plug in electricity to bodies to see what happens. So Frankenstein, that idea for Frankenstein was already there before she went to Lake Geneva.
Mm. A shocking revelation, Graham.
Mm-mm. Well, the stories, all the great stories in life turn out to be slightly fictional, I find.
That is a generalization, but there could be some merit in it.
Mm.
I mean, it's not.
Also
So it's not.
interesting.
We're fair to say usually there's some elaboration, shall we say, some gilding of it in the tradition of Renaissance
Yeah,
paintings.
yeah, it's a nice way of putting it, Travels.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly on Copenhagen, we went to the National Museum of Copenhagen, and including there was a Viking a piece. Now, not like Jorvik, not sort of rooted actually in seeing any of the I don't want to call it memorabilia, but you know what I mean. After the finds, when they found,
Artifacts.
there we go,
Artifacts.
artifacts. Um, so instead, it was more a combination of kind of video imagery and figures and whatever, and it was the story of one Viking woman and her story and going to the end of the world and apocalypse and whatever. And I was chatting with a chap afterwards and said, well, this is how much of this is rooted in truth. He said, well, no, it is largely a fantasy piece. And so that's always interesting when, again, if we're talking about how much of these things is rooted in truth and how much is speculation and how much actually is myth. I mean, myth has to play its part. I don't think we should ever be frightened of that. We talk about
It's not just that.
stars building myths around
Stories are
them. I mean,
a
that seems
story
to
is
me,
about editing. You
yeah,
can't write a story unless you edit things out. A story is looking at the real world
yeah.
and taking bits out to make a structure and
Mm,
and a direction and a point.
mm.
So that inevitably means you're not being 100% faithful to the real world anyway. A story inherently contains an element of lying.
I mean, is that the difference between a news story and therefore a play and a film and,
No,
and a
they're
concert?
exactly the same. Journalists use journalistic information and facts in the real world to create stories which aren't totally accurate. And fictional writers use things they've made up, although quite often they steal their ideas from the real world anyway. I think they're much more similar than journalists like to admit.
Well, certainly, some people tend to believe that journalism is a heap of lies when they don't like a story, they don't agree with the tone of a story or whatever. So, yeah, but I mean, I don't think direct fabrication is part of. Well, actually, this is a
It's not,
generalization again
yeah,
because
well,
clearly there's been
it's
fabricated
sin of
stories. There's
omission.
been fabricated stories. There's been. I think the difference, Graham, is that we know that that kind of practice has taken place in journalism where even editors encourage people to make up quotes or whatever, but in terms of making myths about things, which that seems to be much more the province of the world of the arts to do that. Journalism is
I
about
agree, but
encouraging
there are
surely the
lots of
pursuit of truth.
yeah.
Isn't that one of the
There's a,
differences?
no, there's lots of journalistic myths. Every story has a point and a direction, and that includes journalism as well. Otherwise, it
Mm,
doesn't work as a story. So the sin of omission is has a bad impact on journalistic stories. So
yeah.
they end up sounding accurate because they include facts, but they're not really accurate to the real world because they've left certain important facts out because it helps the
Mm.
story to leave the facts out. So that's what I'm saying. So that in that way, they're sculpting a version of the world that isn't totally accurate, just like a novelist or a playwright
Maybe
sculpt a
it's
version of
to
the world.
maybe that's to achieve greater truths.
Well, the good writers are like that,
Yeah.
but most journalists aren't great writers. It's just
No.
an arena where great work happens in general journalism. It's a sort of fight on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key difference. Now, talking of great writing, you went to Verona,
Oh yes,
Romeo and Juliet, of course, which
Juliet.
and lovely the comparison with on a level of being Verona's Harry Potter. Well, okay, so
Well,
develop that
it's
thought,
the
Graham.
same. It's exactly. There's no
That's
evidence that Romeo and Juliet's characters and family background are
yeah,
based on real life in Bologna,
yeah,
Verona of that time. But
mm,
there's no evidence whatsoever that either family in Shakespeare's play or the characters themselves ever
existed.
existed. And there's also, if they did exist, there's no evidence whatsoever of where the famous balcony where
That was going to be
Juliet
that,
said,
Graham, was going to
"Romeo,
be my
Romeo,
very first question. That was going to be
wherefore
my
art thou
first
Romeo?"
question.
Yeah,
Where
there's
is
no
the
evidence
balcony?
whatsoever. Well, yeah, it's in Verona because they built one.
So,
They've built a balcony which they claim may have been the one that Romeo and Juliet were involved with, even though those are fictitious fictional characters. And the place is mobbed in tourists. from all around the world. And the Americans in particular are very excited. They're very excited to be at this fake balcony about fake characters that probably never existed. And they queue up and they pay money to go in so they can stand up there in the balcony, get the photographs taken. And it was just like going to one of those terrible Harry Potter places in Britain. It was
Well,
like a sort
indeed,
of
going
full
down shambles
horror.
in York with the
Yeah.
which was never featured ever in a single one of the Harry Potter films, and yet somehow a myth
Mm.
has grown up that it was, and so it's regularly visited by Potterites, whatever they're called,
Mm.
and they have made it their street, which is just nonsense. But I'm not going to be able to do anything about it, and York's tourist industry is certainly not going to complain about it either.
No, it was just basically a bit bonkers. I was like, I didn't want to burst out laughing because I was in close proximity to people who were taking it very seriously. But I did feel like laughing.
I mean, obviously, we know the great teenage tragedy is set in Verona, so it's inevitable there's a tourist industry built around one of the well, it's
Yeah,
invariably it is the very first of Shakespeare's plays that most young people are introduced to because it's the teenage romance, even though the word teenage didn't exist at the time that it was written. So, and people want love and they want to connect with love and they want to strike love in a place that's famous for love. So you can see all the reasons for pushing the romance and the tragic romance of it.
yeah.
And you'd be mad
There's
not to
nothing
do
nasty
that.
about it.
No.
Yeah, but if you go to Liverpool, they've got statues to the Beatles now, and as a
Mm.
massive Beatles fan, I think that's great. But there's a difference
Mm.
between that and Romeo and Juliet and Juliet's balcony in Verona. The Beatles were real people, two of whom are still alive, and Romeo and Juliet were in a play. That's a slight difference.
But Graham, we associate Italy with romance
Mm.
and
Okay,
passion.
that's a good point. That is
And
true. Passion's very important in plays.
even if, as you say, it's from a play, I can see every reason for wanting to visit there to see if it rubs off on you as a spirit of romance. Going to Verona to hope that you might strike. You can see, why you would
Yeah.
make that visit.
when your mind is
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.